Good morning. It's great to be here in Amsterdam and to be able to participate in this 30th anniversary event of METS. It's my first time to METS, so I've kind of been on the other side of the ocean, pretty regularly attending the IBEX side of things, so I'm looking forward to our time together today and getting out in the hall as well. What I wanted to start with is to really talk about just a quick side into Brunswick. And the comments today are really going to be about our outlook for kind of the marine industry, but then again, getting a little more into trends and innovation and technologies. So our heritage of Brunswick really goes back because it originated with John Moses Brunswick, who was a Swiss immigrant. You know, he came to the United States and fundamentally believed that, with all the backgrounds and everything he'd seen about craftsmanship in Europe, that he could come to the United States and build a better billiards table. And that's really where the company began. It bears his name. We've been in business now for 172 years. It's an interesting corporation because his fascination with the billiards has continued, and it's the one product that we sell today that's actually got the name Brunswick on it, although it's a very small piece of our overall corporation. But after operating for 3 centuries, as you can imagine over that time frame, and being a multi-billion-dollar corporation today, we're one of the longest traded stocks on the New York Stock Exchange. I think we're the 40th oldest stock on the exchange, and we've been in a number of businesses. And I bring this up for a little different reason. It's not so important what the industries have been, but when you're 172 years old, you have to be able to adapt. And that's something we've done. One of the things you probably don't know, at one point we were the largest recording company in the world, making records. Now that's a fascination because it started with making the cabinet for the player out of wood, and it vertically integrated all the way into recording, and Al Jolson was actually a member of our board of directors. So we've been in bowling and sold that business off in 2014. But we've been in defense, we've been in tires, we sold that business to B.F. Goodrich at a point in time, and medical devices, you name it. This company has gone through a lot of evolution, and I would be willing to bet that we will continue to evolve, over the next 172 years as well. So if you look at what we are today, we're $4.5 billion, a global leader with a stable of phenomenal brands within the business. We're about 80% marine, made up of our marine engine, our marine parts and accessories, and our boat business. And about 20% of the corporation is our fitness business. So we're about 14,000 employees doing business in 140 countries around the world. So what I wanted to do next was take a kind of a quick look at things that we really see in the marketplace today and assumptions that we've made. So just 1 week ago today, in fact, almost at this exact hour, John Pfeiffer's here today as well. We were in New York City doing our Analyst Day, and we talk about how we kind of see the world for 2018 through 2020. And our belief is the global economy, the GDPs are going to be at or below 3%. That's not great, but it's a relatively good environment for us to be competing in. And we think the unit growth, and I emphasize unit, and I'll talk a little more about that in a moment, but we think the unit growth is going to be in the 2 to 4% rate. The U.S. is probably going to be mid-single digits. We think there's still a lot of favorable replacement cycle there for us to continue to build upon in the industry. Fishing, a lot of people lose sight of it. They just think of the business, but about 75% of the units actually are used in fishing, and fishing is the number 2 outdoor activity that people do. Number 1 is jogging. So there's an activity and an affinity that goes to boating beyond just being on the water, but a lot of ties to the fishing application. Our international outlook's a bit mixed, and I'll talk about that specifically, but somewhat less than we'll see growth than what we'll see in the United States. But given the fact that the international markets have tended to be a little bit of a headwind over the last couple of years, we're actually of the belief that the international markets are going to be a bit of a tailwind as we move through 2018 and 2020. But the other point I'd really make is that innovation is providing growth, to our industry, and it's something we need to keep driving. Our North American outlook, it's fairly simple, and this was the comment. The dollar growth is growing much more than the unit growth. Dollar growth has been running at almost 10% compound annual growth rate. And that's not pricing, it's more about things around content. Horsepowers go up, more features, technology on the products. So dollars are moving. If you look at, from a replacement standpoint, if I take the U.S. industry, units are at about 65% of peak, but dollars are at 82%. So moving much closer in that regard. And the other phenomena going on is outboard engines are clearly, leading the way, not only in North America, but around the world. So favorable economics, dealer sentiments, consumer sentiments, all those things are in a positive. Registrations are demonstrating that there's real growth happening in certain segments. And the characteristics that we think are really continuing to be out there are innovation, product investments, improvements in the distribution channel, and then operational capabilities and capacities that are being invested in. So when we look at Europe, we think the market's going to be up 2.5%. Real mixture as you look around the continent, though. Portugal and Italy probably will be a little stronger, but they were also a reminder they were hit probably the hardest during some of the downturn. Scandinavia remains a sizable market, doing fairly well, but at a slower rate of growth than the rest of the EU. We think France is finally rebounding, which is good to see. Germany continues to grow, although albeit at a little slower pace. The UK saw a great increase in 2016. I think that was a bit related to Brexit, and so I'd put that in more of a timing category than a true market growth. And overall, it's been a good market, and I think the same thing is happening for European manufacturers as happening other places in the world, and that's literally finding the labor and the workers and the demands of being able to hire people to meet the production schedules and supplier schedules that people are talking about. When you look at Asia, it's an outboard market. It's expected to grow moderately. Tourism activity is up, and that's positive for that part of the world. Most countries in the Asia market are showing favorable economies and economics there. And then it's a little unique, but that is some of the regional security items actually ends up boding well, for boats and engines because of security, harbor patrols, lots of different government purchases there. So when we go to the market I talked about before, the outboard markets, a key thing, and in the trend category I'd talk about here, if you look at the upper left of this chart, you'll see that outboard engine dollar recovery is at 109%. So it's beyond the peak prior to the downturn, and it's growing. The dollars is growing at almost 14% a year. If you look at pre-downturn and today, you'll notice across all the various horsepower categories, they're all at at or above the pre-peak level, but I really want to talk about, or pre-downturn level. But what I really wanted to point out is if you look at the 200 horsepower plus category, it's now the largest category, and it's also the one that's well beyond, what it was pre-recession. And the second bullet point over on the right-hand side is calling the attention to the fact that almost 20% of the dollar market today is 300 plus horsepower engines, which didn't even exist in 2006. So significant items going on in that regard. When we look at the consumer, lots of good things still going on. There's a lot of recreational boat buyers that are still out there. As you saw the information, 200 million people boat. They're there. They might be a little older, but it's still an activity. It's still something people are engaged in. A lot of runway still left with the boating population from our perspective. And when you look at millennials, the kind of thing we're seeing there is their share or the rate at which they're participating at is really equal to how their age group has participated in the past. So we're not seeing a big growth, but all the belief is that millennials aren't boaters really doesn't tie to the data. They're participating at similar levels. And when you really get into it, they still have an affinity for the water. Now, I love that picture. The only thing that's better than that picture is if there were 4 or 5 engines on the back of the boat, but we'll settle with the 4. As you saw, and either in material in advance of the meeting or the read, I've been nearly 15 years now at Brunswick, and it was nice being out in the lobby. A number of good friends that I've met over the years, and I've spent nearly twice as many years in automotive and commercial vehicles as I have in marine. And some of the companies that are, as were mentioned, Navistar, Robert Bosch, Pilkington, the British, and Hendrickson, to name a few that I've run. But with that combination, this is, I guess I'm kind of the hybrid guy between marine and cars. And no, that's not my personal boat. But through the years, one of the things I find as being in the marine industry and having come up through some of the commercial and cars is a lot of things we end up seeing. The technology or some of the innovation will start over in those industries because of the huge volumes that exist. And then part of our challenge is always figuring out what is practical and how to transition that stuff into the marine environment. And I'd say, as the heading on this slide says, it's really kind of a time of fastening your seatbelts. Nowhere is it more evident or more pronounced than in the auto industry, where the revolution's being driven by really just 4 disruptive technology trends. You see diverse mobility going on, you see the autonomous driving, you've got the electrification, and last but not least, connectivity. So while these particular examples all tie directly to either the highways or autobahns that we experience in the world, you don't have to look far beyond them to start seeing the influence that they're likely to have and are having on the marine industry. So the first area I'll kind of focus on there is shared mobility, the sharing economy. If you look at the kinds of things that are happening, and I think they'll be relevant to us on a go-forward basis, is the global car sales are continuing to grow. They've been growing at about 3.6%, but fundamentally the forecast is that it'll be at 2% growth rates by 2030. And part of the reason the growth rates will decline is because of some of the things around the sharing economy. For example, I think many of you are familiar with the UK, France, China have made no secrets of their intentions to ban the sale of gas or diesel-powered passenger cars over the coming years. And as you know, the French government is striving to make the country carbon neutral by 2050. Under a new bill that's recently been proposed, France would no longer issue any exploration permits for oil and gas, and that all current allowances would be gradually curbed and phased out over the next 22 years. One manifestation of this trend is the rise in these new mobility services, such as car sharing and e-hailing. The detailed analysis suggests that in dense areas with large established vehicle bases, they're really fertile grounds for this new mobility, and many cities and suburbs in both Europe and North America fit the profile quite well. So the new mobility services are likely to result in the reduction of some of the private fleets, but I think that the decline is likely to be offset by increased sales in the shared vehicles themselves, as they'll be getting higher utilization rates and a bit more wear and tear on them. So like the auto industry, I think we in Marine recognize that this is something that's probably going to happen as well around the sharing economy. You know, we have a strategic partnership with San Francisco-based Boatbound, a leader in peer-to-peer rental space. The peer-to-peer market has created a new way to easily connect, you know, a boat owner with someone who potentially wants to rent the vehicle, and the owner being someone who's willing to allow someone else to use the asset. It's gaining traction, although it is still a small piece of the overall market. So the Brunswick Boatbound partnership is really based upon the common belief that peer-to-peer boat rentals encourage boater participation, and at the same time allows a boat owner to offset some of the cost of boat ownership. So the partnership offers us a way to more closely monitor and observe trends in consumer boating. It also provides our dealers, through our Brunswick Dealer Advantage program, the ability to service those programs and potential incomes from boat renting inventory, as well as being part of an emerging segment. If you look at the auto connectivity, as consumers become accustomed to increasing technology and features in their cars and in other parts of their lives, they will expect them in their boats. I don't think that should surprise us. So just as the dashboard in your vehicles has moved from dials to LCDs, so too are the dashboards of boats. The newest digital touchscreen displays integrate with every system that's in a boat, and you can control everything from the stereo to the engine to fish finders, GPS, and more, all from one touch screen displays. The best ones are even being designed specifically so that you can view it from any angle, as well as while you're still wearing your Polaroid sunglasses. Digital engine controls allow even greater technological miracles, like digital anchoring, where the GPS is automatically holding the boat in position by controlling the steering, the throttle, the gear shift, and all while keeping the boat in position while you can get ready to fish or get out your lines and fenders. You can also connect to your engines. You get easy access for your maintenance reminders, performance information, diagnostics, and the Mercury Vessel View module easily connects, to Mercury outboards or stern drive engines. Autonomous driving. I think we all know there's tremendous advancements going on in sensor technology and connectivity, and the emerging autonomous technologies will increasingly allow cars to become a platform for the drivers and the passengers to use their time in transit. That gets a little scary, but it'll allow them to use their time in transit to consume novel forms of media, services, and free up some time for other personal activities. And I think if you look back, what's going on in sensors is what really is like what was going on in transistors some years ago. The increasing speed of innovation, especially in software-based systems, is going to require cars to be upgradable. So as shared mobility solutions with shorter life cycles will become more common, consumers are going to have an expectation that they're going to be able to update those technologies, which will further increase the upgradability even into the used car population. Another game-changing development, software competency is increasingly becoming one of the most important differentiating factors in almost any industry today. For various domain areas, whether you're talking about safety, connectivity, or infotainment. Further, cars are increasingly being integrated in the connected world. Automakers are not going to have any choice but to participate in this new ecosystem. So when you think about autonomous boats, they're probably coming closer or nearer than you might actually realize. I'm going to give you a tale here of kind of two cities. Amsterdam's on the left and Boston, Massachusetts on the right. Because both right now are hosting work between marine experts and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT, an eminent U.S. university. Amsterdam is also about to host what organizers are calling the world's first large-scale research program for autonomous boats in metropolitan areas. It's a 5-year, nearly $28 million robo-boat initiative. It'll be conducted by researchers from MIT and two prominent Dutch universities. The research will have a wide range of potential applications that could come out of this project. In addition to the autonomy that we'll see of moving both people and goods, these vessels could eventually provide on-demand things around bridges, stages, and many other applications, including underwater sensing. So in Boston, they've been conducting extensive research on marine robotics and how it can be applied to boating. And we're happy to say that we're involved with the MIT work. We've recently provided them with a Boston Whaler 250 Outrage with Mercury engines on it that's actually part of what they're doing a lot of their research work on. So we're actively engaged there also. So, it's a dizzying pace at which technology is coming at our industry. There's lots of challenge, there's lots of opportunities, and I guess the question is, as an industry or us as a significant part of the industry, how are we responding to it? And I elected to give you two examples. Earlier this year, we actually created an innovation lab at the university, innovation lab within the research park at the University of Illinois. It augments all the research work that we're already doing within our respective businesses, and it cuts across all of our product lines, including marine and fitness. We've also done a joint venture with Chicago-based TechNexus Collaboration. It's a joint venture wherein we're basically going out and finding the companies that are at a stage where we can go in with angel funds and other levels of investment to in fact find the applicable technologies that we can bring into the marine or fitness space. So it's been a nice investment on our part, and we've got 3 of those incubators already working as a result of that joint venture. So in closing, I'll go back to talk about the wisdom of Yogi Berra. Yogi never went to college, never got beyond primary school, pretty native intelligent, pretty wise guy, a lot of simple things he would say, and you can see one of the famous quotes that's up there. But I think all of us need to remember that just like Yogi, even Napoleon had his Waterloo. So the world's changing. There's a lot going on. Our industry has a great opportunity to be part of the change. And I think as a result of the technology and the innovation and things we can bring, we can keep this industry alive and well going into the future. Thank you.